Good morning. I'm meteorologist Kevin Smith here at the National Weather Service in Pocatello with your Eastern Idaho planning briefing for this Labor Day, Monday, September 7th, 2020. A lot of weather to talk about, most of it in the next 24 to 48 hours. So as we look at our summary here, strong, very strong cold front is going to plow across southeast Idaho this afternoon and this evening. It's going to bring a variety of issues with it. So first, we're going to see a really sharp and rapid wind shift from west-southwest to north. It's kind of an interesting wind direction for our area, and that's going to lead us into a high wind event this afternoon and this evening, and we'll talk about that in more detail here in just a moment. You're going to notice a really rapid temperature drop, probably a 20-degree temperature drop in just a 2 to 3 hour period later this afternoon and this evening as that colder air surges into southeast Idaho. May also see a few rain and even snow showers at the higher elevations with that cold front coming through as well. So, to make matters worse, the strong winds that we'll talk about in a minute are going to be combined with near critically dry humidity across the region, and fire season is here. We're right in the middle of it. Any new or pre-existing fires could spread quite rapidly with these conditions this afternoon and this evening. Finally, on the backside of that cold front, chance of frost and freeze conditions each morning from Tuesday through Thursday. A lot of the valleys in our mountainous regions will be impacted, but also portions of our agricultural zone in the Snake Plain as well. So, starting off with the current satellite view this morning, not much to see here, but I will point out there is this zone of moisture and cloud cover you can see on the satellite here. It's kind of drifting to the south-southeast out of Canada into far northern portions of Montana and even the panhandle of Idaho. And it's kind of an unusual scenario. A lot of times we look to the west to see our storm systems and our cold fronts coming into the region. This is going to be what we call a backdoor cold front, and that means it's coming in from an unusual direction. It's going to be dropping from north to south across the region as we get into the afternoon. So this activity up here is the beginning of that scenario. Looking at our matrix here by area, our impact overview, today is the big impact day. You can see all of our oranges and reds here lit up on today's grids. High winds, critical fire weather conditions, the main concern for the Snake Plain, Magic Valley, South Hills, down into the southern highlands, southeastern highlands. High winds just about everywhere else as well. We did kind of color code this based on the highest winds down here at the lower elevations, a little bit lower. We'll get into this in just a moment. A little bit lower as you get into some of our mountain ranges. And then we transition into more yellow here Tuesday and Wednesday. And this is all going to be post-front, and it's going to be in the form of a lingering snow shower or two very early Tuesday morning, and then some frost and freeze concerns. And particularly Wednesday, we'll look at the temperatures here in just a moment, but Wednesday morning looking really favorable for some more widespread frost and even hard freeze conditions for portions of the region. Lots of watches, warnings, and advisories in effect, as you might imagine, for this scenario. So starting here on the left, these are our wind products. The darker brown or orange shading here, including Pocatello, Idaho Falls, Rexburg, up toward Monida Pass, is a high wind warning. And this is where we're expecting the strongest winds today. Just about the rest of the region, though, covered in this lighter brown, that's a wind advisory. Still expecting some fairly strong winds with the cold front. You can see high wind warnings also in effect here as you get out toward the Treasure and Magic Valley areas, and wind advisories and high wind warnings continuing down into portions of Nevada and Utah as well. Remember, put the winds on top of those low RH values, and we have critical fire weather concerns. So a red flag warning is in effect as well for most of southeast Idaho outside the central mountains, and also for other portions of southwestern Idaho, northern Nevada, northern Utah, also affected by that today. So let's start out with the wind, and as we sometimes do here, a lot of times I do this for you with our precipitation evolution, looking at where thunderstorms may develop, but we're going to pull up a model here, and we're going to walk you through hour by hour and kind of show you the evolution of our wind profile today. So as we start at 11 a.m., you can see we have a little bit of a breeze coming here across the eastern Magic Valley, Twin Falls, Shoshone, and Burley out of the west-southwest, but generally quiet across most of southeast Idaho. As I advance to noon, and then 1 o'clock, you'll notice we start to see an increase in the winds, particularly these westerly winds, like I just mentioned, coming in across the eastern Magic Valley, headed toward Pocatello. You can also see an increase in winds up here near Dillon, Montana, also just north of the Idaho-Montana border. And this is actually the leading edge of the cold front approaching the Continental Divide by early this afternoon. We'll start to see winds increasing up in that region as well. 2 o'clock. 3 o'clock, you can see winds continue to increase, and we start to see this wind pouring over the Montana border. Significant increase here up across the Du Bois area over toward Island Park and just north of Rexburg. Notice the wind directions too. Remember, a cold front is just the leading edge of a different blob of air than we have. In this case, it's a colder blob of air, and that air is going to work it's going to work through the terrain into our forecast area. So you can see it coming in from the northwest down the valleys, draining out of the central mountains here, coming down into Arco, coming down into the Howe area, and then coming due south over the border here from Montana into the upper Snake Plain, and still surging in from the west across the eastern Magic Valley here. Again, this is about 3 o'clock this afternoon. As we step forward, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, you can clearly see the leading edge of that cold front now making it down to Blackfoot and Pocatello. Still westerly winds coming in across Shoshone and Burley, but everywhere else turning into the north behind that cold front, and those winds increasing as we get into the late afternoon hours. And then finally, as we head into the evening, by 7 or 8 o'clock, you can see those north-northeast winds making it all the way down the Snake Plain into the Burley and Shoshone area. So everyone is going to see this sharp wind shift into the north-northeast by the time we get into late afternoon, early evening. Even by 11 o'clock, you can see some pretty strong winds continuing, a little later than we're used to for most of our wind events here in Idaho, still generally out of the north across the region. And some of these winds are going to be sustained up around 35, 45 miles per hour as we get into the later part of today. So with that in mind, let's step forward and take a look at wind gusts. Okay, so the slide I'm putting together here for social media this morning. We'll start here on the left. This is a broad view at what we're expecting for peak wind gusts along and particularly behind the front later this afternoon and this evening. You can see the eastern highlands, Wyoming border area, and also central mountains gusts of 35 to 45 miles per hour. But across the heart of the forecast area here, from the Montana border down across the Snake Plain, the Magic Valley, all of the southern highlands, widespread wind gusts 45 to 55 miles per hour. And then you can see our sweet spot here, our zone out across the Du Bois area, Mud Lake, the Arco Desert, Craters of the Moon, just to the west of our main population centers here along I-15. Gusts of 55 to even as high as 65 or 70 miles per hour, not out of the question by late afternoon, early evening. So we just talked about timing as I go down the tiles here on the right. A couple impacts that we're expecting here. Difficult driving conditions is going to be big for our larger profile vehicles. So particularly the lightweight vehicles, the empty semi-tractor trailers, some of the larger RVs, really concerned about crosswinds and even seeing some of those vehicles try to blow over, particularly if you're on an east-west highway this afternoon, this evening. So if you're traveling out there, you're in one of these vehicles, going to really want to take a look at how things are evolving, possibly use extreme caution or possibly even reschedule your travel to avoid the strongest period of wind this afternoon. So this is going to be a great concern. May also see a few trees and tree limbs come down, a few isolated power outages. Remember, the wind direction's really abnormal. It's coming out of the north instead of our normal strong flow out of the west-southwest. And we think this may actually increase the threat of just a little bit of damage out there because the trees are not used to being hit with wind from a northerly direction. So that's something that may play into the forecast today as well. By early afternoon, make sure you secure all your loose outdoor items or bring them inside if possible, anything that could blow around before those high winds arrive. And really strongly discouraging any recreation or boating on American Falls Reservoir today. You can imagine the type of wind or the type of wave action that we're going to get out of these winds, particularly this afternoon and this evening. If you're usually tuned in to our lake wind advisories and you're wondering, well, why isn't there a lake wind advisory? Because we have a high wind warning in effect, and that's a higher level of alert because of how strong these wind gusts are forecast to be today. Here's those low RH values again. We usually look for 15% as kind of our critical threshold for fire weather, and these are getting close. You can see a lot of values here in the upper teens, getting very close to 15%. Throw the magnitude of those winds on top of this. Definitely a critical fire weather day. Fires could spread very rapidly, so use caution out there. Let's try our best to prevent that from happening. High temperatures today before the front gets here, getting up into the 70s for most areas, even low 80s across the lower Snake Plain and eastern Magic Valley before everything drops this evening. Now, we mentioned maybe a few showers along the front this afternoon into tonight. And as that colder air trickles in, some higher elevation snow showers not out of the question during the late overnight hours into very early Tuesday morning. You can see here a dusting to maybe an inch across some of the higher terrain spots here in Lemhi County into the Central Mountains as well. Most of this is going to be above the passes, so we're not expecting major travel impacts out of this. But don't be surprised if you're up in the higher elevations, you do see a few flakes or a little bit of snow on the mountains. May see similar conditions here at Pine Creek Pass, also down around the Bear Lake area. Maybe a few flakes down to valley floors, maybe a dusting to an inch or two as you get up into the higher elevations over Emigration and near Georgetown Summit as well. And all of this ending by shortly after sunrise on Tuesday with clearing skies. Finally, we wrap up with some temperatures here. So Tuesday morning, you can see very cold across our mountain regions, 16, the current forecast for Tuesday morning in Stanley. But you can also see here in the upper Snake Plain, we are forecasting temperatures to get very close to freezing, so we may have some frost concerns, particularly in the upper Snake Plain, and then, of course, some of our mountain valleys here. Temperatures only reaching the upper 50s to near 60 for high temperatures Tuesday, again behind that front. So a very crisp fall feeling to the air as we go through your day on Tuesday. Wednesday will rebound a little bit, but not before a very cold morning. And you can see again here, mountain valleys, hard freeze looking very likely. We're going to see really light winds, clear skies, so great conditions for strong cooling during the early morning hours. And even across the majority of the Snake Plain, you can see temperatures getting into the low 30s and even upper 20s in a few locations. So another day we'll have to watch very closely for frost and freeze conditions and impacts to agriculture. Thursday, rebounding just a little bit. We'll watch for some patchy frost Thursday morning, but otherwise afternoon temperatures getting into the upper 60s to mid 70s across southeast Idaho. And that's what we're expecting. Again, strong cold front with the greatest impacts today, and the number one impact we're going to have to be cognizant of going into the afternoon and evening will be those high winds. That's it for your hazard briefing this morning. If you have questions for us, as always, feel free to reach out. Also visit our website, weather.gov/Pocatello, for your latest forecasts and updates on our alerts that are in effect. Have a great day.